This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Introduction. Culture influences the way people behave. It is thus essential to understand it in relation to the global workplace where professional communication is employed as well as in personal interactions. Every country that has multinational corporations and other businesses dealing with international firms should recognize that cross-cultural differences negatively impact business communication. This paper is going to study Americans' communication style and how it affects the verbal and nonverbal communication styles of other cultures. In addition, it will look at how their communication patterns are evident in the workplace and personal interactions. Moreover, the similarities between American culture and other communication cultures will be discussed. Finally, the paper will conclude by giving recommendations on dealing with cultural differences in business and personal interactions. The cultural patterns attributed to American culture. Direct communication is one attribute associated with American communication culture. Americans believe that individuals ought to say what they mean and mean what they say. For them, the formal or informal conversation should be direct to the point. Reading between the lines during conversations is discouraged. In addition, people should uphold honesty in any communication. To them, other people's feelings are not concerned. Their concern is usually the truth. American communication culture is the low-context culture. It is usually individualistic in that they believe that people are not very much conversant with the agenda in the conversation. The conversation should thus be explicitly spelled out. In addition, they prefer verbal communication more than nonverbal communication. To them, nonverbal cues result in misunderstanding. For this reason, face and expressions are less critical in communication. They believe that giving and receiving information is the ultimate goal of the communication. They also encourage criticism and confrontations during conversation. Unlike other communication cultures, Americans value the purpose of communication or the task rather than the person. This means they don't emphasize establishing personal relationships but dwell on getting the job done. The American business communication style encourages them to discuss issues directly. They believe in talking less without wasting time. Moreover, Americans are polite and friendly but only maintain relationships for a short time. They also use a lot of protocols in their language. The American communication culture is comprised of verbal communication. It is usually task-centered and involves the key personnel only. They meet to make decisions and do not consider relationships at all. They need to consult wide sources of information, and thus, the process is fast. Cultural patterns in the workplace and personal interactions. The American cultural patterns are normally evident in their workplace and in their personal interactions. In the workplace, Americans do not like discussing issues openly. For this reason, they are seen as aggressive and rude by other cultures. Time management is also valued in their communication culture. They thus discourage verbosity in their speeches in both the workplace and personal interaction settings. This is because they see it as a waste of time. Their culture is also evident during business meetings. They usually tackle the agenda or the issue at hand directly. This is a sign of positive progress to them, while to other cultures, it is seen as meaningless discussion. Sometimes, it is a way of brushing off the discussion. When you meet the Americans for the first time, either in a formal or informal setting, they are usually friendly and polite. This is seen in their language, in which they are usually concerned with the other party's welfare. However, at later stages, one realizes that it was just a protocol and they are not seeking a long-term relationship. Moreover, Americans ask more personal questions in conversations. This means that when it comes to private affairs, they are open as compared to other cultures. This may sometimes be problematic since when involved in young relationships, other cultures may interpret it as intrusiveness. Similarities and differences. My cultural behaviors conform to that of Americans when I employ both verbal and nonverbal messages when conveying meaning. In this way, there is no miscommunication since Americans understand messages effectively in the presence of words. The two communicating cultures get along when I use direct and informal methods of communication. They are not forced to read between the lines to understand the meaning. To them, effective communication entails putting everything on the table and speaking openly about an issue. Ineffective communication is also evident when dealing with the Americans. For instance, in my communication culture, the face is essential when it comes to saving face. This means that at no time does my culture allow confrontation or criticism. This is because it is seen as embarrassing the other person. This is unlike the Americans' behavior. To them, face is not important. Their concern is on the task of communication. They thus confront or criticize, hence embarrassing others. My culture also communicates in groups, especially to those people they are close to. Communication is always intensive. That is, it is usually comprised of wide and detailed information. This is not the case with Americans. Their communication is basically at the personal or individual level. They give information that is only necessary for their work environment. Professional communication in my culture is thus effective. This is because we are formal and plan our meetings on time. Moreover, we attend meetings once we have agreed on something. The Americans are informal and usually meet without having decided on a particular issue. Conclusions. Understanding other people's cultures can lead to effective communication in an intercultural environment. This means that they know what is expected of them while communicating. This includes the tone, language in terms of formality, and body posture when talking to different people. The key point in effective cross-cultural communication is understanding other people's cultures and the things that make the difference between your culture and theirs. An individual should be aware of differences resulting from different cultural backgrounds. First, one should be aware of contextual differences. Different cultural contexts bring these about. They are associated with the interpretation of messages during communication. In such a case, an individual should be able to differentiate between a high and low culture context. For example, my communication is high context. For this reason, we value and emphasize nonverbal communication, unlike Americans who prefer verbal communication. Secondly, one should be aware of social and nonverbal differences. Socially, one has to know how to behave while communicating. In addition, one should understand the meaning conveyed by nonverbal communication. This depends on different cultural environments. If you want to find more works like this essay on verbal and nonverbal communication, head over to ivypanda.com. It has a collection of free samples with thousands of submissions covering virtually all academic subjects. No registration required to access it.